biography. What's going on, everybody? It's me, Mark, and I'm back again with another episode of Blerdkast. And today I am joined by my guest, Jeff Carita. Jeff Carita, how are you doing today?
It's we may have to go again. It's Jerry Carita.
Oh my God. It is right here in my face.
Right.
Oh,
you know what? I'm happy to roll with it.
No, that's embarrassing. That is so embarrassing. It is right here in my face, and I looked at it and still call you Jeff. Because you said Jeff Haas' name when we started this.
Yeah. No, I know. I was gonna say I was gonna just let it roll and kind of slip my name in a few times and wait for you to realize you did it. But I was like, nah, let me tell him right off the bat.
Yeah, because I would have just kept going. Going. All right, let's try that again. Take two. That was a good catch. That was a nice icebreaker too. I'm really ready to go for this now. All right. What's going on, everybody? It's me, Mark, and I am back again with another episode of Blerdkast. And on today's episode, I am joined by my guest, Jerry Harita. Jerry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I am wonderful. I am so happy you can join me. I have been excited to have you on my show since I booked you. Just thank you again for coming on and just being on with me at this late hour.
Oh man, thanks for having me. Yeah, we're recording this. Are you on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm on the East Coast too.
Yeah, so I'm in New York, and it's 10 after 8. It's 10 after 10 right now.
Okay. Well, normally this would be the time of the night I'm waking up to go to work, but somehow the government has to give us off days. So I'm going to enjoy that, and I'm going to interview you. All right.
Where are you?
I'm in Atlanta.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So
I was down there for work a while ago. Nice.
Oh wow, yeah. I've never been to New York City. I've been to New York, but not New York City. I do want to go. I know it's a really big, amazing city to visit. A city that never sleeps.
Yeah, it's a big, crazy place, and it's like they call it a melting pot, but that's not really true because it's not like all the different groups of people kind of spread out. They all kind of found their own little neighborhoods. So you have like you're kind of walking through. It's like walking around the world. Walk through like Lower Manhattan, and it's like Chinatown and Little Italy. It's like totally different architecture, neighborhoods, signage, it's food, language. It's kind of an awesome place to live.
Okay, cool. If you don't mind me asking, what part of New York do you live?
I live in Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn, but I'm about as far away from Manhattan as you can be. Like I'm about as far away as you can be from the cool part of Brooklyn without being in Staten Island. I'm like this close.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm a Southerner, so like I kind of know the topography of New York, but I know the boroughs is kind of crazy up there. But how are you enjoying it? You said it's a melting pot. But
I love it here.
You love it? Okay.
I love it here. I was born here. I was born about like a 10-minute ride from where I live right now. I was born in Sunset Park in Brooklyn. I grew up in Bay Ridge. I live in a neighborhood now called Bath Beach, which is like right next to where I grew up. It's great. I love it here. My wife grew up here. We never left. Fantastic.
Okay, cool. And you have a kid, you have a son. So how is it raising a family there in Brooklyn?
It's amazing. Like I actually have 3 kids, and the schools that they're in are really good. Like we've been really lucky. We happen to live in an area where like the schools that we're zoned for have been really good. And because I grew up here, my wife grew up here, we have a lot of deep roots here. So, like my kids all play basketball, for example. I run the basketball program, that they play in. And it's a basketball program I played in when I was 10 years old, when I was a kid. So, things like that. It's a really like a nice, the cycle continues kind of thing.
So you are on Blerdkast because you created a comic book that you are doing a Kickstarter campaign for. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is my second one. I've been working as an editor and publisher in comics now for about 2 years. This is the second one that I created myself. This one's called The Grizzly Crew, and it's about a group of pirate bears who sail the 7 seas and protect villages from evil pirates that are looking to ransack every night. It's a story I created with my son, my then 6-year-old. 2 years ago, walked into my office and just started talking to me about a picture that was on my screen of a bear. And the next thing I knew, he was telling me all about that's Captain Grizzly. He's the captain of a pirate ship, and they go around looking for honey or treasure. They go around looking for treasure that looks like gold, but when you squeeze it, it's wax and it's filled with honey. And he was just telling me all this, and I was like, at first I was ignoring it, like, oh yeah, Captain Grizzly, that's hilarious. It's a great name for a pirate bear. That's really funny. And then I just kept on working, and he just kept talking, and I suddenly realized he was telling me this whole story about the Grizzly Crew, And in that first conversation, he said it's a story called the Grizzly Crew, Dad. And that's when I stopped what I was doing and I started taking notes.
I'm assuming this how it all happened, like one night where he came in and started telling you the story that he came up with. Where in that night did it click for you to like, maybe I should start taking notes and turn this into something?
It was like 20 seconds after he started talking. Because like he started talking about it and he already had a whole story to tell me. So he was just telling me about the story. And I realized like 15, 20 seconds in that he was going to keep going. And I said, if I don't know if it's a thing, if it's going to be a comic, or if I'm going to, try and write it up as a short story or something. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I knew that he had this whole thing worked out in his head, and I wanted a record of it. So I started taking notes, and then I think probably the next day I was like, we should work together on this and turn it into a comic. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do that together.
Okay.
And so yeah, so I reached out to a friend. I got some character designs, and we went from there.
So where did he get the idea of the story from? Kids can be highly imaginative, so I can only imagine where he got this idea from.
So he's afraid of bears, and so
Oh,
what happened was this was 2 years ago, and Midjourney, the AI thing. So
yes.
so when that came out, I think everybody logged into it for those first couple of days and was like trying to figure out, is this the end of civilization? Is Judgment Day upon us? What's going on here? And so I was playing with it, and you walked in and you saw some like weird like bugs with swords and animals with like guns and stuff that I was like telling Midjourney to create. And he just started talking to me. He goes, "Can it make a Spider-Man monkey?" And I was like, I don't know, it's a Spider-Man monkey. And it made a Spider-Man, like this gray furred monkey in a Spider-Man mask. And then he was like, what about a minion wizard? And I was like, all right, hold on, minion wizard. And it made a little furry looking minion wizard character. And then he said, what about a pirate bear? And it made a pirate bear. But when those AIs, especially when they first came out, they were really bad with faces. So it was like this deformed bear with like in silhouette, like dark, giant, shadowy thing. And he was just kind of staring at it, and he's afraid of bears. So I just went back to what I was doing, and then suddenly he was telling me about the bear. I think he was just processing what he was afraid of. I think
Right.
he was just looking at it and telling a funny story about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of how the whole thing started. I think that's where it all came from. It just came from him staring at it and being like, I'm afraid of bears. What am I going to do here? Maybe he's friendly. Maybe he helps kids. And he just kind of told a story about it.
How did your son take it when you approached him the next day with the idea of turning his story into a comic book?
He was really into it. I think he likes to draw. He spends a lot of time on YouTube, like doing tutorials on how to sketch things and stuff like that. So he was very into that, and it's just something we can do together. So like each kid, I think, looks for a thing they can click with one of their parents about. Each one of my kids is something different. And so with him, the older ones like to play sports, so they play the sports. A lot of them play the sports that they think I like the most.
Uh,
But the little guy doesn't love sports that way. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. We'll do it together. And then we started bouncing ideas back and forth for other characters in the story and kind of what they look like and what goes on and all that. And he just was like really into it.
so how long did this process take once you kind of came up with the conceptual idea and wanted to sit down and work with him and flesh it out into a comic book? How long did it take to go from the idea stage to a rough draft of what the first issue would be?
So pretty quickly we had an idea of like what the overall story was going to be for the first 5 issues, like just
Mhm.
the like the first arc. I would say within a couple of weeks I had an outline for the first 2 issues that I liked, and then a few weeks later I had most of a script written. Even now it's still ongoing. Like the character design phase like took a little while, so I would say the whole thing probably took like 6 months before we were really ready to start. Putting it in front of Nick, who's the artist, and asking him to just draw pages. It was probably about 6 months. And then in the middle of all that, I did Cicada Samurai, which is my other story that I created with a different creative team without my son. And so, that kind of took me away from this for a few months.
So, like you mentioned, you have been an editor in comics for about 2 years or so, and this is your second series that you've created. How did you fall into this occupation of creating comics?
So my day job is I'm a TV producer. I do reality television, and I was working on a show 12 years ago. It was the first season of Comic Book Men, which is
Hmm.
it was on AMC. It was Kevin Smith's comic book shop in Jersey, and my geek thing when I was a kid was TV. It was TV and movies and stuff. It wasn't comics. I never had that moment where somebody handed me a comic book as a kid, and I went like, "Oh my God, I found my people." Like I didn't have that moment until I was in my 30s. So I was like 30, 31 years old, 32 years old, something like that. And I was in the comic shop, and all Kevin and his friends are just like hanging out, talking about their favorite comics growing up. And the whole show was about people coming in with their collections that they were so passionate about. And I spent that whole summer working in a comic shop, to make that show. So I started reading the books. And so my first comic that I really read all the way through was The Walking Dead. And that's kind of how I got into it. So
That's actually pretty good to start with.
no, it's a very good one, but it's weird because a lot of my friends now, especially other creators, they grew up reading, Batman and Spider-Man and all the superhero comics, and I didn't really do that. So I've always been kind of more into the indie stuff.
Ah, gotcha. I gotcha. So, what is it about the comic book medium in itself that you find more fascinating? Since you're a late bloomer, I don't want to say late bloomer, but since you were introduced to comics, more in your adulthood, what is it about comics that fascinate you the most with that certain medium?
I mean, I like reading them because it's one of those things where you can do anything. There's a lot of times like in TV especially, which is what I do for a living, where people will, there's always this thing of like, is that too ridiculous? Does that seem like impossible? And in comics, that's just not a thing, especially in indie comics. You can kind of mash together whatever couple of things you really think are cool and turn it into a fun story. Multi-genre, you can kind of shock people on a page turn. I just really enjoy reading them because there's like a rhythm to comics that doesn't exist in any other medium, doesn't exist in television, and I find that creating them is also it's collaborative and it's fun. And those are two things that TV is often collaborative and sometimes fun. Comics, it's like always. Like I can, as long as I can get my artists on board with the thing that we're trying to do, we can do whatever we want. And that's like a really kind of liberating and, creative place to be.
That's a good take on that. That's a really good take on that. So let's get back into the Grizzly Crew. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So you said you from concept to first draft, it took about 6 months, and then you found an artist who was interested in working on your comic. What is that process like looking for an artist? You are a writer and you want to find someone who can artistically and visually convey your what you envisioned. So what is that process like of trying to find an artist?
So every comic I've worked on now, the experience has been different. So for the Grizzly Crew, I knew right away who I wanted to work with. It's someone that I knew, my buddy Nick Justus, who I met by working through Blue Juice Comics, which is the comic book company I started working with
Mhm.
initially a couple of years ago. And he does a book for them called Anne Bonny, which is also an all ages story about, it's a pirate story as well, kind of a supernatural pirate adventure. And so I knew I wanted to work with Nick because I've seen his other work and he does like anthropomorphic animals like in a really cool way. I have one of his things here. This is he does these sketch covers where he'll buy a bunch of blank sketch covers and then just wait for people to order them.
Mm,
So I got this Iron Man sketch cover that he did for me for one of
that's
my other
really nice.
kids. Yeah, that's my older son. That's Harlan, who's the co-creator of the Grizzly Crew. That's his favorite Marvel character. It's Iron Man. So I got that from Nick. So that I knew who I wanted to work with. I reached out. He was into it, and that's how that happened. But every other experience has been different, and it's hard. It's really hard as someone who I'm not like a well-known person, and I can't afford to just call up like Greg Capullo and be like, you want to do a comic with me, buddy? Todd McFarlane, you're busy.
Right,
Like
right.
I'm not there. Not yet. So you're kind of try to meet artists at conventions and for Cicada Samurai, I got really lucky. I reached out to a couple of artists on Instagram, two different people, Takashi Okazaki, who did Afro Samurai and he does Star Wars Visions now. He's great and he did my character designs. And then I had to find another artist to do the book because Takashi, I always knew going into it he was busy and he couldn't do it. So I found Mary Landro. I found her on Instagram, and I just got lucky. She has a really big following online. She's incredibly talented. Her style is kind of anime esque looking, and she's just awesome and was great to work with. And I reached out and she was into it, and I got lucky. But I'm doing other projects where you just kind of reach out to people that you think you like and kind of feel them out, because it can be if it's a bad fit, it can be really bad. It can be like a really hard thing to work through. So it's a very delicate thing. You're right. It's like you're finding someone who kind of shares your vision or brings something new to it, that you're not necessarily visualizing.
Right, right, right. That's good. That's really good. With the artist that you found, what was that moment like when you told him the story and he reviewed the script? What was that moment like, seeing the first characters being drawn and the first drafts of those characters? Was it like, oh my God, you nailed it, or like, oh, this needs work, or we got to tweak some things? But what is that like, finally seeing your characters come to life moment like for you?
It's magical. And what's kind of fun is in this case, the day after my son and I started talking about this, I texted Nick and I asked him to do one character. I asked him to do a commission. And I just kind of described Captain Grizzly. And what he drew was a very kind of like more of I don't know what the word is. It was more of like a child's book character. Like it would have been at home in like a board book that you would have read as a kid, like a little kid. And it wasn't quite right because it wasn't really like a comic book character. It was more like a children's story illustration cover, that kind of thing. And it was beautiful and like colorful, and it's just big thing he did for me. It was really great. But I showed it to my son, and then we started talking about what the characters should look like in the book. And as soon as Nick sent back pencil sketches, I was like, this is it. This is like, we referenced all the cartoons I grew up, the Disney afternoon and Saturday morning cartoons like Gummy Bears and Tailspin and things like that. And those are the kinds of anthropomorphic, bear things that we wanted to do. So that's what he drew, and they looked great. And I had a lot of fun. It was awesome seeing them come together, and it was a lot of fun doing it with my son because he had notes. So like, there's the villain's name in the story is Captain Wolfheart, and so it's a wolf pirate. And Nick drew him and sent him back, and he kind of looks like the first draft kind of looked like a coyote. And so my son watches a lot of Looney Tunes, and so he was like, "No, no, no, that looks like Wile E. Coyote. He's too funny. That can be a funny character. Well, the Captain Grizzly should be really scary." So he redrew Captain Grizzly, and Captain Grizzly is now this like, dressed like Captain Hook, like fancy pirate with these big sharp teeth. And he's an Arctic wolf, so he's got white fur, and he's this really terrifying person with a glass eye. And Nick made him a lot scarier, and I was like, nailed it. That's great. So it was so much fun doing it like with him and with my son. That was a really great experience.
That's good. That's good. Now, you rarely get to work with family members, and even so rarely get to work with your own children. So I'm sure this project was takes a special place in your heart. So what I want to ask you is, what was it like experiencing all these moments for the first time with your son? Like you mentioned that you already worked on another comic book before, that you did without him, and you experienced all those things for the first time yourself. Getting work back for the first time, completing a storyline, seeing pages actually come together. But what was that experience like, seeing it through your son's eyes for the first time?
It was also like a lot of fun. Like he took to it right away. He was like giving me notes on the characters, on what they were wearing, and that was all like a really great experience, and kind of challenging too, because he's also, he was like, this started when he was 6. He's 8 now. I just turned 8 last month. So, you kind of have to guide him along into like things that would make a really good story, and kind of not make it totally just whatever the kid wants happens in the
Right.
book. You kind of want to tell like a good story. So that part's been kind of fun and challenging, just kind of like keeping the story on the rails a little bit. Yeah, the whole experience has just been a lot of fun.
Were there moments where you and your son, I don't want to keep referring to him as your son. He's listed on your Kickstarter. I
Harlan.
didn't know if you want me to just announce his name like that on.
No, it's fine. Harlan. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, did you and Harlan like bump heads anywhere he had an idea and you were trying to guide him to maybe a more a better way of how to explain that idea, and you just bumped heads like, no, it has to be this way, or no, it has to be another way?
He jumped ahead to a lot of like really big ideas. Like he was always thinking in terms of like the way that like if you grew up watching like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that, every season there were a bunch of episodes, but there was also one big villain for the whole season, and he would always think in terms of that. So we were just in the middle of figuring out Captain Wolfheart and how he's the big villain for the first big story we're telling, and then he's like, and then there's also a sea monster character, and that's another villain. And I'm like, okay, we got to like we can't have all the villains. We don't want to have all the villains all at one time. Not till later. We'll do that later. So that was like funny. But I don't think we really butted heads. Like, what's nice is it was always collaborative, and I went into it like wanting to do it with him. So it wasn't like I was like fighting for anything with him. We would just talk through the ideas.
So for you as a parent, what was the biggest takeaway that you got from this experience with working with your son on this project?
I mean, it said he's already better at this than me.
Well,
Sadly, that was what I
that's
took
kind of
away.
what you want, though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I want him to do better than me like later. But when he's 8, I don't want him to necessarily already be better at telling a story. Not quite yet. Like but yeah, he's so funny. Yeah, it's just been nice. It's like you kind of get to know them and how their mind works in different ways by doing something that you don't expect with them. Like when you sit, like anything, you have any experience where you're just like, my kid and I are gonna go camping, and now while you're camping, there's not a lot to do, and you talk and you spend time together, and you kind of learn the inner workings of their mind in a way that you don't in just the day-to-day taking them to school and kind of taking them to other activities and helping them with homework and kind of focusing on stuff. This has been a much more sprawling, just kind of what should this story be creative experience. So I learned a lot about him that way, which is kind of fun. Highly recommend it. Do something creative and fun with your kids.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I don't have kids, but soon I will go down that road and experience all these things and these joys for the first time myself. So let me ask you this: going back, talking more specifically about the Grizzly Crew. I like to ask a lot of my comic book artists this, especially if they're on the writing side of things. Let's talk more about the art direction and why you chose to do color versus traditional black and white for like say indie comics and things like this.
I mean, I just kind of, again, I had it in my head that this was kind of a Saturday morning cartoon, and those are all color. And I just wanted it to be eye catching for kids. It's an all ages story. I think kids are more drawn to, bright, colorful characters and kind of funny looking characters. So I think I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do full color because of that. Um, that's the main reason, honestly. We kind of wanted to make sure we had that. The colorist on the series is a guy named Nathan Lawson. He's very talented, and so he's in the middle of working right now. He's got the first few pages, so I don't know if you're able to share them when you edit this or whatever. But if you go to the campaign, there are a few pages on the main campaign page that you can see that they're inked and they're kind of black and white, and they look great. And I thought about leaving it black and white after I saw Nick's first couple of pages, but then you see the first couple that Nathan colored and they look amazing.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking at it now, and don't get me wrong, the black and white inks look like really detailed and like really amazing, but that color, it just pops. I get instant Saturday morning cartoon, Disney Channel, one Saturday morning, Fox, like all the stuff I grew up watching in the 90s and 2000s. So I really dig this art style.
good, man,
It,
thank
it
you.
it looks like it screams like this is for kids with the art style, but like also this is an interesting story. Like the character designs are so great, especially like in the black and white. I'm looking at this one black and white image, and it's so detailed and it's so crazy. I can't wait to see how that looks in color. Um,
Yeah, that's one that page you're talking about is so the story starts when the story starts. You're in this village that's being attacked by pirates, and so that's the first thing you're looking at right there is the village that's being attacked by pirates, and these kids and their mom, they're hiding from the evil pirates who've been ransacking their village.
right.
And I wanted the pirates to be legitimately scary, even though like we're living in cartoon world. Like old like Jim Henson stuff and old cartoons and stuff were scary sometimes. And so I wanted the pirates to be really scary. So Nick did them. It's at night. the only light is really these fires. So when it's colored, it's going to be really kind of shady and, red and orange and stuff. And that inked pirate face in the window, just scaring the family, is just terrifying and awesome.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's like so crazy. I'm such a nerd. Like I went to art school and I used to draw and stuff like that. So when I start like looking at other people's artwork and just like seeing their creativity, just like my world lights up. So I
Yeah, that's good, man. That's awesome.
where did you get the idea of making this a 24-page issue versus say like a graphic novel or something a little bit longer? Is it because you meant for this to be all ages and wanted to be something quick to digest, or were there other factors involved?
I mean, honestly, it was mostly a financial decision. For a little while, as recently as just a few weeks ago, I thought about reformatting it all into a smaller book. Sort of like I bought this book through Kickstarter called Grizz Grobus, and it came as a hardcover, and it's like the size of like a Captain Underpants book. It's like 6 by 8 or something like that. And it was this beautiful little hardcover book that I thought like this is kind of a great size for kids. Like kids were already reading these books, Captain Underpants and Dog Man, and all those books are that size. When I was a kid, or not when I was a kid, but a few years ago, a kid series that I used to love reading were the series of unfortunate events, and those came as like little hardcover books also,
Right, yeah.
like little ones. Yeah, and so I thought like for a while I was like maybe it should be like that, and then I'll write the whole first arc and print it as like 120-page hardcover little book. But ultimately, it's a financial thing. Like I wanted to kind of put it out there on Kickstarter and see if I could get some help paying for the colors to finish the book. And I didn't want to be trying to raise enough money to color and publish, 120 pages in a hardcover. So I went more traditional, where I said, let me be like 24-ish pages per issue and keep it as like issues. And then later down the road, I'll probably still reformat it and kind of print it as a hardcover, a children's book, like a 120-page graphic novel kind of thing. So this, the issues will be chapters in a 5-chapter story, 5-issue arc.
So let's talk about some of your goals on your Kickstarter. A lot of indie comic book artists have different goals and levels for people who choose to donate. Let's talk about your membership tiers and the things that you're offering for people who do donate to your Kickstarter.
Yeah, so I think the cheapest thing is if you just want a digital copy of the book, you can get that for $6. I intentionally kept the prices down. I keep on hearing that from people that young adult, or not young adult, but like all ages books don't do as well on Kickstarter as like things with lots of boobs on them. So or more like more mature books. Like I think people are looking at Kickstarter more for things they can't find in stores. That are a little bit out there, very indie. And this kind of feels a little bit more mainstream, I think, when you look at it. It kind of feels like a Saturday morning cartoon. So, I wanted to keep the prices down to bring more people in. And so that's what I did. So, for $6, you can get the digital copy of the PDF, and that's easy. That's it, $6. For $10, you can get any one of the 3 covers I have. And there's one by Nick Justus, who's a series artist. There's one by Pablo Verdugo, who's another cover artist I work with from time to time, who I really love. I love that image. That's currently the main image on the campaign. And then there's a third cover that's in black and white that kind of more heavily features one of the bear characters instead of the koala. Her name is Rosie, and the artist is Len Danovich, who's like also just awesome and incredibly talented. And his black and whites were so awesome that I was like, let's not even color it. I kind of want to give people the option, for the discerning collector, like someone who might want like a black and white option. And then from there, you can get any virgin cover, any of the 3, choose a virgin cover for $15. You can then start mixing and matching. And basically, if you want 2 copies with 2 different covers, there's a 10% discount. So it's already inexpensive and it gets cheaper. If you want 2 virgin covers, there's, I think it's more like a 15% discount, something like that. If you're someone who wants to collect all the covers, that's an option as well. And then any version of mixing and matching that. And then what I'm really excited about for this campaign is the add-ons. Almost all of the add-ons are art commissions that you can get from Nick. So my series artist agreed to do up to 10 of these things, and so if you like original characters, if you have any cartoon character or comic book character that you love, that you want to have a one of a kind commission from Nick, you can order it. If you support the campaign at any physical level, buy one copy of the book, it unlocks all these add-ons. And so he'll do Wolverine, he'll do Batman. We have a Space Ghost that he did that just came back. I don't know if you've seen that. There's a bunch of stuff like that, so you can kind of get it. He'll do it black and white or full color, 5x8 or 11x17, whatever you want. And then the big thing that's available is Nick's pencils and inks board for the cover that he did. So his cover, one of a kind, collectible item, is available as an add-on as well. I think that's a little more pricey though. It's a $250 jump in, but it's a one of a kind thing. And if this thing goes well, I have connections in TV. I'm going to try and make it a TV show. So that cover art might be worth a lot of money one day.
Hey, you never know. I really think this is going to do well. I'm looking at it now. You are very close to hitting your mark with 7 more days to go. Even as we were as recording this, like I saw your numbers go up. I was like, oh, that's really nice. That made me feel things.
I was going to say you must be good luck because I think it just added like $100 while we've been sitting here talking.
Hey, I am. I've been told I am a lot of people's good luck charm. So hopefully, this is a good omen for you. I'm just amazed that you really worked with your son on this, and you just took his idea and created it into something physical, or I guess digital in this sense. But you still helped him, nourish him, guided him to take this idea from a concept, took it through all of its iterations, and now you have like a final product that you are very close to funding and being able to put out there in the market. That must be a huge accomplishment, just for you as a dad, but like for your son himself to actually have something like this under his belt. Because I was in high school, still like, I want to do comics, and still never got there. But yet, your kid got one. He's 8. He got a comic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really proud of that because I think it's important. I think if it's like if art, if any kind of artistic thing is something he wants to chase, when he gets older, I think just having the experience of having done one all the way to completion, all the like finishing it, is very important. Because I think I like you, I always had this idea like I'm going to go make TV shows that I love and things like that. And I never really followed through on a lot of it. And so, kind of pushing myself to finish each of these campaigns and each of these projects, and kind of the fulfillment part of it is such like, just shipping. It's just like putting things in boxes and labels,
Right.
and just getting yourself up in the morning and doing that is hard. If you're trying to be creative, you're doing a lot more logistics. As like, also, I'm the editor, I'm the publisher, I'm the owner of Thorny Comics. Like, it's all me dealing with the printer and making sure the books arrive and they all look good and that all the customers are happy. So it's not like I'm just writing the book and then I got someone else handling it. I'm kind of doing it all myself. And that's a lot to take on. And I think it's a good thing for them to see, though, like your kids to kind of see you taking on hard things like that and kind of finishing them, finishing projects.
Yeah, I think that's very important for kids that age to see, because that was something I struggled with a lot. Like you said, I had a lot of goals, started a lot of goals. A lot of them didn't end up so well, but the ones that stuck, I'm happy that they stuck. With this project, the Grizzly Crew, with you working with it on your son, what's the one thing that you will take away from this that was different versus with the other project and with your other comic?
I mean, it'll always be more special to me because I did it with my son, so I'll always look at it. All the characters in this story are based on people that are in our family. A lot of the Grizzly Crew are based on, my kids, my wife, me. Captain Grizzly is kind of based on nobody, but all the other characters on the boat are, family members. Rosie is my, a 10-year-old bear character. That's my daughter. Mama and Papa Claw, that's me and my wife. Stefan, the big grumpy grizzly bear, that's my other son's middle name. So, there's lots of and Jimmy, the little koala, that's Harlan. That's like him. So I think that's what I'll take away from it is like, it'll always have, even if it's just the one issue and we never do anything else with it, it'll always be like this cool special thing I did with my boy.
All right, so this is a fun question. I usually ask this again, like especially if I'm working with an artist or a writer, I like to ask them this question. In your opinion, since you've done multiple comic books now, what's more important to a comic book? Is it the art, the visual art of the comic book, or is it the storytelling, the script itself, the actions that you are having the artist draw? Is that more important, or is the visual aspect of a comic book more important?
See, I think it depends on what your goal is, and
Oh,
I
I
think,
love that answer.
yeah, I think the two things are you can't really pull them apart. A comic book is a collaboration between really just those people. If you have an artist who's doing all the art and all the color, and you have a writer who's telling the story, it's just those two people. So if you have one without the other, someone's going to pick it up and feel like it's incomplete. But if you're trying to just catch eyeballs, the art is more important. Period. Like you can't. They had that expression like you can't judge a book by its cover. But I'm telling you, like based on my convention experience, everybody on that convention floor is going to judge your comic book by its cover before they decide they're not going to come over and pick it up if it doesn't have like a beautiful eye-catching something on the cover that draws them in. And with this medium, I think that's if your goal is catching eyeballs and getting people to read the story, then I think hands down the art is probably more important. But then that's just to get people in. If you
Right.
want to keep people coming back, the storytelling has to be on point. So it depends on what the goal is. If you're just trying to catch eyeballs, art's more important. You can sell a lot of number ones, with just like a really cool cover and some really flashy art, and or a prominent artist, someone who does something cool. Um, but if you want them to come back for volume two, for issue two, you need to tell a really, really good story. And so that's where your writer needs to be really on point and the storytelling needs to be really on point.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I cannot but agree 100% on what you just said. I do think the storytelling and the visual art are tandem, and it really depends on what your end game, what you want your reader to experience is. But they're definitely both important and should work in tandem. So let's talk about the indie process of publishing indie comic from start to finish, getting funding, like you said, sitting there making sure every copy is printed and the colors are good, the inking is good, finding artists, collaborating with other people. Uh, let's talk about that whole process. What is the process like from taking just an idea in your head to an actual physical comic book in the indie market these days? What is that process like?
Well, you're relying on a lot of other people. That's kind of the rub is like you write it, you have your artist who's your friend and they do the art, and you have a colorist and a letterer. And sometimes you do some of those roles. Some of my friends do their own lettering to try and keep costs down. Some artists do their own coloring. And so, but those are all people that you have to collaborate with who have to like get your vision and bring something to the table themselves. The letters should really, even the lettering should really like add something to it. So, looking at your book over and over again, it's actually, I find that to be the hardest part of the whole thing is like, when I first write the story down, I always think to myself, like, I'm proud of myself, like, oh, I like that. So I like how that twist worked. I liked how this page turn moment worked. And then when you are reading it for the 300th time, because you're giving notes now on the last round of letters or the print file before it's too late to give it a note again, you know, even your favorite moments start to not feel as like awesome anymore. Like where you surprise yourself with a cool moment and then later you're reading it for the 300th time, it's not a surprise anymore. And so you're just like, yeah, this is the part where I ripped the guy's head off. Totally, whatever. Let's move on to the next thing. Like you kind of get over it. And that's kind of hard. Like remaining the keeping the enthusiasm going all the way through getting that book printed and in your hands so that you can put it in 100 or 200 boxes to get it into your backers hands. I would say that's the hardest part.
Mm.
But all those stages are important, and picking the right printer and having a relationship with somebody at the print house so that you can ask questions and understand exactly what they think you want, and like kind of make it all work. It's exhausting. It's rewarding when it's done, and you look back and you're like, I did this. Like I did this with all these other people and all these other, we all came together, we all figured it out, we all got on the same page long enough to make this book. And that's awesome. That's an awesome feeling.
That's good. That's really good. Now, let me ask you this. At what process of the creation process of making this comic? Do you start the funding aspect of things? Because you're gonna, like you said, you came up with a script in 6 months, and then you start looking for an artist, and you just happen to know people already. But everybody isn't so lucky to know an artist already who's willing to just do some work just to conceptualize an idea. Some people have to go pay for artists off the rip, just from jump. Would you recommend an indie comic book artist or a team start reaching out for funding to fund their project?
I think that it's really a personal decision. For me, the first Kickstarter I ran was for Blue Juice Comics. It was for a book called Billy the Kit, which had been on Kickstarter previously. The creator, the two creators, Justin Gray and Barry McLean, they had run a Kickstarter for the campaign, a couple of years earlier. So that was the first volume. Blue Juice picked up the book. When we wanted to do a second volume, we knew we were going to bring it to Kickstarter, and it would be the first one Blue Juice did. And I ran that campaign with them. And we waited until that book was done. So it was ready for print. Like we just had to prepare the files and send it to the printer. So, and that was great. I think for a first campaign, if you're doing this on your own, like Blue Juice is a publisher. So we had resources to fall back on, and the creators of that book, both own a piece of it. They're not getting paid page rates. So finishing that first book was not a huge financial, finishing that first issue was not a huge financial risk. If you can afford, though, to finish the book before you do the fundraise on Kickstarter, I think that's great, because then you're not under pressure to finish the book while people are waiting for it, But the truth is, if you tell your backers what's going on, and they know what to expect when they back the campaign, they're great. Like they know that some people have finished the story and they're just raising money for printing costs and to kind of cover their expenses that they're already out of pocket. Some cases, like for me right now, Grizzly Crew, the money that I'm raising is going to be for coloring and printing. So, I haven't paid for those things yet, and I'm not going to until the thing funds. So there's going to be a little time, between when the campaign ends and when I actually deliver this book. Whereas with Cicada Samurai, I was a little further along. Like we were halfway through. I had already paid for the art, and we were almost finished with the art before I finished that campaign. So I've been all over the map with it. It's kind of all over. But I would say it's a personal decision. If you can afford to make the book, especially on your first time out, it's good to have the book almost finished before you start fundraising, just so that, if something happens, there's a delay, your first time backers are not waiting, months for one issue floppy. That's I don't feel like that's right. I want them to buy the thing and get the thing as soon as possible, so they come back for more.
What is your biggest fear with the Grizzly Crew project?
I mean, it's still, my other projects funded a lot faster. I hit my goals a lot faster, and my funding goals were significantly higher. For Cicada Samurai, I think I was at 3,500. I hit that number in like 4 days, and then it slowed down. They all kind of have like a dead area in the middle, so that happened. But we hit our Billy the Kit funding, in the first week. Cicada Samurai hit very quickly. I did another one called Reign of Dracula that took almost all the way to the very end to hit funding. It was like a few days before, but that was a much bigger number. We were going for $6,000. So it's a much lower threshold, but it is moving pretty slowly. And I've only got 7 days left, so that's one thing I'm afraid of. The biggest fear is always like you put something out there and people don't like it. So my bigger fear is I hit my number here, I send the book out, and then when I come back for issue 2, people are like, nah, like issue 1 was nah, and they're not into it. So that's always the biggest fear. I think anything creative, if you're a stand-up comedian, like bombing is the worst thing, like getting up there and they hate you. Like it's anything. It's always that. It's like the feeling of what if it doesn't find its audience? What if people just don't like it?
Have you mentally prepared your son for the possible outcomes of the Kickstarter?
I mean, I'll probably shield him from whatever happens.
Okay.
Like just I don't want. He's 8. I don't think he needs to understand the crushing feeling of rejection just yet. Maybe when he's 10, and we're doing the second issue, then I'll let it flop and I'll tell him like, people don't like your ideas, son. Like, get used to it. You're not special. But I think 8 is probably too young to start giving them that lesson. I give them another couple of years.
Okay, okay. So with that said, this is gonna succeed, and you will never have to worry about that because it's just gonna
Thank
work
you.
out for him. Because he's
I hope so.
I'm really enjoying this. I kind of want to get to know a little bit more about you and what led you down this path of what I call geekdom. You mentioned you work in television. You do comics. You are a writer. You are a creative person. So let's go back to where it all began for you. Let's talk about your nerdy history and some of your nerdy things that you grew up liking and watching that led you to this path of making comics.
It's probably all my mom. It's probably all from my mom. Like my mom and dad were very young when they had me. My dad was only 18. He was an athlete, and he was kind of a cool kid. My mom was like an actress and a poet and wanted to be a writer and was a creative person. And she was in all the school plays all the way through college and stuff like that. And then when I came along, I think that I spent a lot of time home with mom. She was into lots of sci-fi stuff. So I got into Star Wars and Star Trek very young, because of mom, and like the Next Generation is like the first TV show that I watched like all the way through, and I watched it with her. And then I did all the other spin-offs. I did Deep Space Nine and, Voyager, and like there was an old mini series, that actually would make a great comic book series, by the way. It's called Earth Star Voyager. And it was this thing where it's so hilarious looking back at it now. It was probably on like Channel 5, like Fox, like, in like 1990 something. And it took place in 2012. It was only like 20 years in the future, and Earth had been ruined by acid rain, which is a thing that doesn't, it's not even a thing anymore. But that was like the global warming of the 90s. People were concerned about this is going to ruin the planet. It was acid rain, and from like aerosol cans or something. So human beings found another planet like thousands of light years away that they were going to send people to scout it and see, can we move humanity to this other planet? And because of how long the journey is, they had to staff the ship with teenagers. So it's a bunch of like super genius teenagers on this ship traveling, like, it's like a 35 or 40 year round trip to get to this planet and back, and then see if it's like habitable for Earthlings. And I remember I loved that series. I just like, sci-fi was my jam as a kid. And then all through high school, I was in high school when Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out. All of the shows that Joss Whedon did after that, Serenity. I was in college or like later. It was after college for Serenity. All those things. And so it wasn't until I was working on Comic Book Men that I started reading comics. But all my geeky stuff as a kid was sci-fi TV shows mostly.
Okay. What was your? I'm assuming it's Star Trek because you mentioned it and how much you watched it with your mom. But what is your biggest fandom of all? Like, if you could only pick one.
Oh wow. Oh my goodness. I mean, these days it might actually be Star Trek. I
That's a good
love all the
choice.
new shows. All those new shows they do on Paramount, like Discovery and
Yeah,
the Strange New Worlds. Those
yeah.
are great. Those are great shows. Those are just really great shows. I really love Picard, like as a nice send off to the cast of the Next Generation. That was a great show. It's probably that. I have like, I think like everybody, I have kind of a love hate with Star Wars these days. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I think everybody does. My God, Disney, stop doing everything I love.
they
Sorry,
they
don't
own
mean to
they
say
own
that.
all of it, man. They own all of it. It's either them or Warner owns everything. But
Yeah,
I think I gravitated more towards Star Trek anyway because it's episodic, and I think I like that kind of storytelling, and that's kind of, I think, why it was a natural transition to comics, because it's like issue based. It's sort of
gotcha.
it's a serial storytelling format. So there are little chapters, and that's sort of how TV works. So I think I think TV was always my jam, even more than movies.
With your watching Star Trek with your mom, did that create like special memories or a special bond that you had with your mother? Was that just something that y'all did throughout the course of your childhood? Was you just watch Star Trek together?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I thought at the time that it was special. I think at the time you're a kid and you're like, I'm watching this movie with this show with my mom, whatever it is, you know. But it's definitely where it all came from. So I think in retrospect, yes, in retrospect, I think it's something that we talk about now. My mom, had a whole career in public relations at a hospital here in Brooklyn, and now she's writing. She's writing again, for kind of the first time in a long time. Short stories, and she was published in the New York Times, had a short story published there, and stuff like that. So, like I think we talk about that now, the creative stuff, which is great.
Is that kind of where you're getting I don't want to say inspiration, but like you're bonding with your son now on the geek level. You're creating comics together. I'm sure you guys have shows that you guys like watching together, just you and him versus with your other children. Is that connection something you learned from your mother to transfer over to your son?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think the thing that he's really into now is he likes to watch all of something all the way through. So we did all the Star Wars movies in chronological order. We did all the prequels and then the original trilogy and then the newer trilogy, the J.J. Abrams trilogy. And we did Han Solo in between. The only one I didn't watch with him was Rogue One because it's actually kind of a war movie, and I just didn't. Again, the darknesses of war. I kind of wanted it's less of a
Gotcha.
fairy tale, so I
Gotcha.
stayed away. He was young when we started, so I was like, we'll come back to that one. But now we're doing the Marvel movies. So we're doing. He hadn't really watched. He's watched Thor Ragnarok probably upwards of like 500 times because every time he has a stomach ache, he watches Thor Ragnarok. It's like his favorite thing to just put on and zone out to. But other than that, he hadn't seen any of the other Marvel movies. So, we went back and we started at Iron Man and I think we're up to Doctor Strange now. So we're coming up on the end of the Infinity War, the end of the Infinity Saga. Um, but yeah, he loves it. We watch those in like short increments because it's always like, who has 3 hours to sit down to do anything anymore?
No, that's true. That is very true. Are you gaining any new insights from doing these rewatches with your son and watching these movies with him through his eyes for the first time and just
We were
kind of seeing
seeing,
how he understands things?
yeah, like I'm always surprised at how much he gets. He kind of always like I pause the movies sometimes. Like some of the Captain America movies, especially, are a little bit more like Captain America: Winter Soldier is basically like a political thriller,
Yeah,
and so you have to kind of hit pause and be like, do you understand what's going on here with the senator and and this and like the Secretary of Defense? Like those are things a 7-year-old is like, what is the Secretary of what? Like they don't know what that is. And so I slow down a little bit to explain that one, but everything else he's been really on top of and kind of gets what the stories are and how they work. Um, so that's been a lot of fun. I've noticed as I'm watching it, if anything, the inconsistent things, little things that got dropped later, things they didn't really come back to. I'm trying to think of a good example because they're all it's such a well thought out whole thing, the entire universe and kind of like how from the first end credit sequence, in Iron Man, like there's so clearly a plan that was like executed. And all these other filmmakers, like we're talking about comic books being collaborative. Imagine that, like a dozen filmmakers, a dozen directors and writers and people coming in and doing a dozen different movies, and all of them kind of telling one gigantic story. Like that's amazing. It's an
yeah,
amazing feat that they've accomplished there.
yeah, it is. And one that they have not really lived up to since. But that's a conversation for another video. I have such a gripe with Marvel and the MCU right now.
Oh yeah. What do you think?
Yeah,
What do you think the problem is?
I think Endgame is kind of their problem. And what I mean by that is they spent 10 years leading up to that moment, to that theater moment that we all shared collectively in 2018. Took 10 years, three different phases. And like you said, it was so tightly written. Everything that you saw was connected and you could see the pieces forming. And then Endgame happened. You got the Avengers Assemble and historic cinematic moment. And since then, everything just fell apart. They released Black Widow, like I feel like 4 years too late. That should have came
Yeah.
out like sometime after Civil War. The changing of the old guard to the new guard. I come from comics, So I was excited to see a lot of these newer characters finally get to be in the forefront. But I work in TV too. I work in media and things like that, and I understand the rule of the general audience. The general audience isn't going to invest time in learning about Miss Marvel and Hawkeye's daughter and all these other characters that aren't Iron Man and Captain America and Black Panther.
Yeah.
And then there goes another thing, the pandemic when the world ended, that definitely shut down a lot of things creatively and production wise because they started to struggle there with WandaVision, Loki, and their Disney Plus stuff that they was launching. The setbacks with the movies, from just not being able to shoot them
Writer
at the
strike and
time.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the writer strike that happened last year. Jonathan Majors, that controversy. The fact that I don't understand this, WandaVision, the Disney Plus series, had Wanda Maximoff's character going in one way, and then you get to Multiverse of Madness, and it's like WandaVision doesn't exist because we already went through this arc with her. Why are we redoing it again?
Right.
Um, I think since Endgame, they just kind of have been a mess. Like things just kind of unraveled, and they knew that they would never have that Endgame moment again.
Yeah.
Um, what are you going to do? Do the same thing, and then this time is with all these other characters plus everybody else in the first three phases? That's not going to work. You're trying to go too big with bringing in all the space characters and the space stories when the audience just wanted the down to earth stories. The audience wanted Fantastic Four and X-Men. You gave us the Eternals.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't love the Eternals, but I will say I've been a pretty big fan of all the TV shows. I think Loki was really good. I really liked WandaVision. I like when something is weird, and
Yeah, I do too.
like the Star Wars movies, the more recent Star Wars movies, this is a very like controversial opinion that I have, but The Last Jedi is my favorite one. And it's because it's weird. It's because he took risks making that movie. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of the risks fall flat. Like he made mistakes. There are some things that just don't work, I think. But there's like the most chilling moment to me in almost any Star Wars movie. Like right up there with "No, I'm your father." Like right up there with that moment is Kylo Ren looking at Rey and going like, "You're nobody. You're not even part of this story. You're nothing. This is not about you or your family." That I had goosebumps watching that scene.
Mm.
And then they just ignored it. They just pretended it never happened, and they made her like, Palpatine's granddaughter or whatever they did. And that drove me bananas. They were literally just like, let's just bring in the villain that everybody hated from way back when people liked the movies. Let's bring that villain back, and he'll be kind of attached to a machine and even scarier, and we'll do that. It drove me nuts. But like I think all the Star Wars TV shows kind of fall a little flat to me too, because they're all kind of just filling in gaps in a story without really taking any risks. The one I enjoyed is Andor, and it's
Really?
like I really loved Andor. I loved Andor.
Really? I
Yeah.
have yet to stay awake during any of those episodes of Endor. I
Oh
find it
man.
so dragging and boring.
Oh,
Um,
it is. I'll give you this. It is a slow build, but if you get to the episodes when he's in jail, when he's in prison, like, oh my goodness, what's his name? The actor who is usually he played like King Kong and he played Smeagol. He played what's that actor's name? Who does all the motion
God,
capture?
I don't. It's gonna bug me until I get
I
it.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, you have to look it up.
I'm gonna look it up.
But I agree with you about The Last Jedi. I know it's a controversial choice, but it is out of that trilogy my favorite because they were doing something different or trying to. They did a lot of stuff that worked for me and a lot of stuff that did not work for me.
Andy
Casino
Serkis.
Planet storyline was just
Oh,
unnecessary.
no, that's what I'm saying. Totally. Like, there's a whole bunch of things in that movie where I'm like, I don't know why they're the whole thing with the code breaker guy, like,
Yeah,
like,
like
like,
what? That was
yeah,
you
like,
didn't see that was a trap from the beginning.
and then for the
Slaves
first time in
landing
the
in space.
entire, yeah, and then for like the first time in the history of Star Wars, we're worried about running out of gas. Like, that's the main plot is that they're
Oh
going to
my
run out of
god.
gas. Like I totally like. There's lots of that movie that I have problems with, but there's like five or six really big things. The fact that you can like pass an object through the force,
Right.
transformative, like an amazing transformative thing. And I really enjoyed everything about Kylo Ren in those movies. And that thing where he's just like, you're not even part of this story. I wanted to throw up for her,
Yeah.
because it just felt like they were going towards she's Luke's secret niece, or Leia's like secret daughter from another relationship, or Han Solo's like best friend's kid or something. Like there was going to be some connection to the Skywalker family, and I was so happy and so like, oh my god, this is going in a completely unexpected direction moment. And then the next movie, they just pretended half of that movie didn't exist.
Yeah,
you know
I know. I hated that. First of all, I don't even play Fortnite, but the fact that I had to witness a Fortnite event to understand the plot of the Rise of Skywalker,
yeah.
dumb. Two, nobody asked for Palpatine to come back. Like, why, whatever. But I'm with you. Like, I love that moment. Like you said, you love that moment with Kylo Ren talking to Rey about, oh, you're nobody, you're not even part of the story. I took that as, yes, I want her to be nobody. I want her to not be connected to Palpatine, to a Skywalker or a Solo. I want her to just be some nobody. Like the end
Right.
of the movie where that one kid just picked up the broom and was like, future Jedi. I was like, yes, I want this to be a nobody. Like, don't get me wrong, the Skywalker family, all that stuff was great.
Absolutely.
Years ago when
Right.
it came out, I want to see something new that y'all never done before. Going to going warp or going to hyperspace and shooting through a dreadnought. Ingenious. This Leia finally having force powers, even though they could have been did something with that. I liked it. I was cool with that. Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber, like whatever. That was cool. The expansion of the force powers, passing objects through the force, force ghosts.
Yeah.
That whole scene where he just goaded Kylo Ren into shooting him
I
on the
love
planet.
that.
And,
I love that.
so
People were
much
so
stuff.
mad about that. People were so mad about that. I love
Yes,
that. I love that. And
I
and
love
and
that.
like and like I don't know. Like I think the thing, the story was, it should have been the last ride of Han, Leia, and Luke. Like that
I
needed to
agree.
happen though in the first movie, in the first of the new movies. I think that's when it should have happened.
Yeah, I agree.
Instead of like copying the plot from the original trilogy, and having like everyone look for Luke for a whole movie, and then you have
Well,
another movie where your merry band of rebels never together in the whole second movie. They're none of these people are ever together,
that's
and
true.
then they start dying.
Yeah, yeah,
Han's already dead, Leia dies, and then Luke dies. Or Luke dies and then Leia dies. You know what I mean? Like Leia's the only one who makes it, kind of, and then she doesn't make it because Carrie Fisher died. It's a
right.
whole.
Oh my God, that too. And then like, oh, so I'm
But
gonna get back to. No, go
Marvel on
ahead.
the
Go
other
ahead.
hand, Marvel on the other hand, I like the fact that they did that many movies leading up to Endgame that all kind of built amazing, just amazing. The TV shows, I love WandaVision. It's so weird. It's so weird. I really enjoyed it. Loki is just, especially the second season of Loki, is just chef's kiss, like
I agree.
beautiful.
I
You
agree.
know, and what other shows have they done? Have they done
Miss
any other shows yet?
Marvel,
Miss Marvel, I really
Falcon.
liked Miss Marvel too.
Hawkeye. I did not enjoy Hawkeye.
See,
Because
I liked all these shows. I like that they're different. It's kind of what like the first couple of Marvel movies, every one of them was a different genre. The first Captain America was like an old war movie. The second Captain America was like a political thriller. The first Thor movie was this like high fantasy story.
right,
Iron Man was like more of a 90s action movie. But like they all had a different, and then like Ant-Man came along and they made that into like Ocean's 11. It was like a heist movie,
right,
you
right,
know?
right.
And like they all had a different flavor. And I liked that. And then once they all were together in all the movies, we lost that. Once the Russo brothers were doing, which is necessary, it's the central in a comic, like the Civil War central comic has one
Right.
feel to it, and then all the offshoots of it have a slightly different feel depending on who's writing it and what their POV is. So the Endgame movies and everything that came right before it, and even the ones that came right after it, all kind of started to feel the same. So what I like about the shows, even the ones that are weird, I like that Hawkeye is like, it's what Daredevil, wanted to be on Netflix. It's like a
Right.
street level crime story. It even has the Daredevil villain. Um, and then I felt like Wanda was like as close as the MCU is ever going to get to House of M. from the comics,
Yeah, I
which
agree.
I really liked, and I like how weird it is. I like these things even when they don't fully work, But like, I really enjoyed all those shows, and Miss Marvel, I just like a different take on these characters and kind of and all that. I do agree that I don't know what the movies are anymore, but I've always kind of enjoyed. I think Kang is just a weird villain to use. Like they spend so long setting up Thanos, and he's gone, and they don't want to try and bring him back, even though they could. It's a multiverse; they could do whatever
I
they
hear
want.
rumors that they are.
You know? Yeah, I know. They're always trying to dip back into the past.
Yeah.
But like if they go towards Secret Wars, like that's a big. This is the thing about comics, right?
Oh, you must haven't
Comics
watched
can.
Secret Invasion yet, have you? Because
No,
they
I watched
did.
Secret Invasion. I like
Okay.
that too. Weird, made no sense.
Yeah, I
Like a
hated
bunch.
it.
Yeah, like a bunch of it was like, how long has Rhodey been an alien?
Right, right.
Has Rhodey been an alien since Rhodey was Terrence Howard, or only since he was Don Cheadle? Like I was a little confused on that point. Like that would have been really funny if suddenly it was like if it was Terrence Howard in the pod, right?
Right.
And it was
Oh,
replaced
missed
with
opportunities,
I
Marvel.
know,
That could have
I know.
made that series better instead of
Yeah,
worse. But
it would have been
getting
really
back to
funny at least.
your initial question, what do I think the issue is with the MCU? Is what I think the issue is with Star Wars franchise. Disney got his grubby little hands on it, and they saw a cash cow, and they're wringing it dry.
Yeah.
And because
See,
of that, they are diminishing the quality of the works that came before. Or in the case with the MCU, the first three phases, they're just like, oh, $1 billion movies, let's keep it going, wring it dry.
yeah.
That's the problem.
I mean, for sure, they bought those things with the intention of wringing out. It's a business, right? It's always a
I get
business,
that. I get that.
and like I agree with you. I think that even when you're wringing something dry, though, it can be really creative and good.
Yeah.
And I think that they have been mostly. There's a couple. I thought the latest Thor movie was like way too comedic and just broadly goofy.
They were
Um,
trying to recapture Ragnarok while
yeah,
also put him on this new arc that it just didn't work for me. And then the one thing about Thor Ragnarok, I wish they did because Marvel has always had this problem. They have never corrected it. They have a villain problem. They don't, except for Thanos, they don't let any of their villains shine. And in the movie or in the series, the Disney Plus series, the villain's done, and that's
yeah.
it. No more villain. And you wasted so many great villains. Taskmaster, White Vision, where is he? Just
But we
so
don't
many.
know yet. He's around. We haven't
Right,
seen him
right,
yet. We just
right.
don't know yet.
And we're in the middle of phase 5. We're in a year where they only have one movie coming out, and it's Deadpool and Wolverine.
Right.
So many unanswered questions. But Thor the God Butcher, I wanted to see him kill gods, and he didn't. He killed lesser gods, and
Right.
we just got nothing. And then the actor that the
Christian Bale.
yeah, he did such a great job as Thor the
Yeah.
God Butcher, and that's
He was
it.
great. He
Yeah.
was great.
And we didn't
Yeah.
get that much time with him either.
Yeah. And what time we had was scary. Like he was good.
Oh
He
yeah, yeah.
he was really good. I actually see I think that I'm trying to think of the other villains that I really liked. Like Loki was great, and Loki became kind of a hero. So I don't even know if that counts anymore. Like in
No, it doesn't.
retrospect, yeah, Thanos was obviously like they were building up to him for so long, and he had such a clear psychotic plan.
Mhm.
Um, who I really liked that isn't really part of. I guess now is canon, but wasn't really is Kilgrave. But I think it's just the actor. Like, did you watch Jessica Jones on Netflix when it was on
Um,
Netflix?
a little bit. Like the Netflix MCU was kind of hit or miss for me, especially like with Iron Fist. But I watched a little bit of Jessica Jones,
Yeah,
Daredevil, and Luke Cage.
Iron Fist was awful, but Daredevil I really liked. I think 2 out of those 3 seasons were really good. I loved Punisher. So like different from everything else, so violent and like crazy. I really enjoyed how different it was from everything else.
Mhm.
I really liked Jessica Jones and I liked Luke Cage a lot. I kind of wish that story had kept going because Luke Cage was kind of going in an interesting direction where he was kind of the kingpin in Harlem now, kind of like the villain.
Gotcha.
But he was really good. But Jessica Jones, the villain, Kilgrave, it's David Tennant, and I think it's just David. I could watch David Tennant sing the alphabet and be very happy.
Yeah.
He's just hilarious and like funny, and he was a great villain in that story.
Um.
But yeah, Thanos was the big one. I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of times, I mean, isn't that always the problem? Like, I don't think any of the DC villains, apart from the Joker, is ever really memorable.
I mean, they
Yeah,
can make them memorable because, especially in
yeah,
Marvel, they have a lot of memorable villains. That's why I'm so afraid of what they're going to do with Magneto when they do X-Men.
right,
That's somebody I wouldn't want to see just killed off like that. He's so integral to that story. You got to keep
right.
him around. I don't even see Magneto as a villain, to be honest. Depending on what storyline you want to go with.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
but yeah,
He's complicated. He's always
yeah,
doing the wrong thing for the right reasons.
right. And I love what they did with Thanos. Still to this day, my favorite MCU movie is Infinity War because he won. Just for the simple fact that
Right.
he won. And I love a good villain story where the villains win and the heroes have to deal with that. And Endgame gave me that. I
Yep.
mean, not Endgame. Infinity War gave me that.
Infinity War.
Endgame just dramatized it and kind of made it a little extra, but it was still good.
Yeah, and even what I liked, even at the end of Endgame, the way that they put the world back together, it's still broken.
Yeah, yeah,
Like they very intentionally had that thing where it had to be Iron Man snapping his fingers to make sure that like he doesn't unmake his own daughter. You know,
right.
he needed it to be the last 5 years happened. So all these people who've moved on in their lives now, this person who disappeared from their life 5 years ago is back and part of their life again, and it's very complicated. And I like that they didn't shy away from that.
Yeah. I do wish we got a little bit more stories set during the blip. Not like I know Endgame was, but like I wanted to see like some of these other characters deal with life during the blip, during that 5 years. And we only get like bits and pieces here and there of how that
Yeah,
went. But again, missed opportunities. That I'm gonna make a podcast episode about that and invite you back on and just talk about Marvel's missed opportunities.
yeah. I'm in. You let me know
Um,
when.
Oh, definitely, definitely. This has been great. So let me ask you this: just a couple more questions, and I'll let you go. But I'm super focused in on this interview because like I'm enjoying it. What is your favorite MCU movie, or MCU property that's come out today?
I mean, Loki season 2 is pretty perfect.
I I mm,
It's
I
pretty perfect, and
I
all the
agree.
acting is great, the writing is great, the story is great. Kind of his transformation into this like super god king character thing that he
Right.
does is amazing. Um, it's pretty it's pretty perfect and like gut wrenching and beautiful and all the things. It checks all the boxes. What's like the most fun to watch? I really enjoy Ant-Man. I really enjoy like watching the Ant-Man movie. I like the heist. I like the Edgar.
The Edgar
Um,
Wright kind of
yeah, I
direction.
love that.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
love that, and I love how at the time it was such a hard turn. It was the first Marvel movie that was like broadly funny.
Right.
Like Iron Man was always quick witted and like would say funny things, and like other characters would have funny lines here and there. But Ant Man was the first one that was like, this is a funny movie. This is a
Yeah.
broadly comedic movie um, that still advances the bigger story. So I think that was a very big, kind of important one. Um,
Yeah, I agree. And Paul Rudd is just like America's sweetheart. Like
yeah,
he
he's great.
just enhances that role so much to me.
Yeah, but I would say Loki season 2. It's hard to argue against almost anything in that story. I wish, if anything, that there was a little more time, like a little more. The thing where he goes back and keeps trying to fix it over and over again, and learning what he needs to learn in order to go out there and take over himself. There's
Right.
something there's something there where I'd like to see him learn a little bit more. But like other than that, you know, it's such a great like end to a personal journey, that we've been following for since the first time all the Avengers got together.
Right. I agree. I agree. I definitely agree to that. So let me ask you this. In your mind, how can Marvel or the MCU correct ship? Because obviously they're in a tailspin right now. We're in the middle of phase five. Like I said earlier, we're only getting one MCU movie this year, plus a couple of Disney Plus shows. The fan base is losing interest,
Yeah.
left and
I
right.
I mean, I'm going to say this, and I think this is maybe a weird position to take, but I don't know that it's fixable, and I don't know that it should be fixed. I don't know. I feel like, like genre movies and genres, they all have like heydays. Like people don't make like westerns anymore. They're just
True.
not popular right now. They had a little renaissance like 15 years ago, but generally people aren't really making those anymore because that's just not the kind of story that people are into right now. And
Right.
I think like what's the next big pop culture thing going to be? It's probably not going to be the Avengers. It's not going to be some iteration of that. There are so many good stories in the comics that they could tell, and they will try, and some of them will be really great stories, and some of them will be really great new characters that we don't know yet. Maybe for the first time they'll get Doctor Doom right, in a movie. The Fantastic Four will be like really good. Maybe maybe the X-Men will be better. The 20th Century Fox X-Men movies are pretty good though. Like some of them are really great characters. So some of them are not. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying all of them, right? But some of them are really good. And some of even the movies where they rebooted and everybody was younger again. I didn't mind some of those. Like Days of Future Past, I thought was not true to the story in the comic at all, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy watching it. And I liked Magneto and Charles Xavier, their friendship throughout all those movies and their kind of weird adversarial relationship that they have. Like those are good in a lot of ways.
Right.
Like will they be better now? Like I don't know. Will there be will they somehow kind of bring all these universes together into one place and it not feel kind of ridiculous and over the top? I don't know. I don't know. In comics, you can get away with that kind of stuff.
Right.
In movies, it's harder. And like I think that's what happened with like the Thor movies. Ragnarok I think was very funny. But it kept itself centered just enough on the serious story going on. And then they kind of lost that in the fourth movie. God of Thunder, um, Love and Thunder. So I don't know if it's fixable, and I don't know if it should be fixed because they can't go back. They can't just keep making Iron Man movies. Like what was working 10 years ago doesn't work anymore. The
True.
movie business is different, so they're not going to
They have
spend.
single-handedly changed the movie business, and then the world ended, and people was
And
like, "I don't want to go to the movies no more. Just put this on the app."
that's what I'm saying. So I don't know. I think that maybe the future of the MCU is in television shows that are on the Disney app, and it's going to be just be a different kind of storytelling. And honestly, I always think that like it's just me maybe because I love TV more than movies. I think the comic books lend themselves better to episodic storytelling. So, I liked I liked a lot of the Marvel and Netflix shows, not Iron Fist, but
Right. Right.
the other ones were pretty good. Um, so I don't know if I don't know if it's fixable in the way that you're asking. Like, I don't know if it's going to be like they're going to start making $1 billion movies again that everybody loves, that everyone's like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't think it can do that again because they did it, and I don't think I think people move on to different stuff. So they want something new. And I don't know if it's a reboot of the same characters telling a different version of the story, or if it's like,
Or
but
if
like the
it's gonna
comics
be
do all this stuff too. Like the comics had female Thor, the comics kind of put these characters together in kind of exciting and weird ways. And sometimes it falls flat. So I don't know. I don't know what the future of it all is. I think the Deadpool movies are great because they can kind of wink at us.
yeah.
Uh,
Ooh, I got a lot to say about that when that comes out. But I agree with you on a lot of what you just said. I don't think it should be fixed. Because like you're right, genres come and go. Like I remember in the early 2000s, horror was the growing popular genre, and then that quickly died out because of oversaturation and too many I know what you did this last Tuesday movies and
right.
4 movies and Saw movies. They're still making that, and I think it's the problem with the MCU is they created this thing. It was so awesome that everybody was in for 10 years, and they shot themselves in the foot by continuing that same formula that quickly didn't work after Endgame.
Right.
And then doing too much, splitting the movies up with the TV shows and trying to make it all a bigger cinematic universe. They have single-handedly started and killed the superhero genre.
The what?
Marvel, the MCU has both single-handedly started and killed the superhero genre. Like, look at the DCEU/DCU. They couldn't even get started and then compete with the MCU, and then they raveled. And look at them now. Look at all the other superhero movies and things that have come about. Invincible, The Boys, Gen V. Those are great takes on the superhero genre because they're darker, more gritty, but that was just the next iteration of where this was going to go from the
Right.
Disney era of the superhero franchises,
Yeah.
the superhero genre. So of course that's going to go there, and of course it's only going to get darker and more gritty and more adult. But once you get there, you've kind of ended that genre. That's just the course of it. It goes from family friendly to just adult only, and then after that, you have no more audience.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard, and like I think we're both saying, I don't know if it's fixable. I don't know if it should be fixed. I kind of feel like Kevin Feige should have, like, after Endgame, ridden off into the sunset, because I think that this was inevitable with or without the pandemic. I think
Right,
that
right. It was going to
like
happen.
it was going to happen. He built that whole thing over 12 years, like take a bow and go on to something else. And then when all this is falling apart, everyone could have been like, it's because we let Kevin leave, you know? He could have ridden off into the sunset.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I don't know if it's fixable, and I don't know if it should be fixed. I feel like it should be something else now. Like we should cycle back around to some other kind of action fun thing that we can do with our kids, and I don't think it's going to be a different version of the Avengers, a different team, or the X-Men, or the Fantastic Four. I think all those movies might be great. Like the Fantastic Four might be really good. I don't know,
Yeah, it might be.
but is it all going to build towards a brand new thing? I That's all that's good as Endgame. I don't know if that can be done. Not with not like I don't know. I don't know.
No, I agree. I don't know. I don't even know what the next popular genre would be because it's kind of like so much things have changed and how people consume entertainment now has changed. And like again, we both work in television, and for the last 6 years of my career in television, I've been learning that television is a dying breed. But just a couple of months ago, I'm like, oh no, it has a little lifeline somewhere. With how the streaming services are working, consolidating into basically just becoming the old cable companies of yesteryear, and people are getting back into free TV now. That's a big thing at my station we're talking about and excited for is free over-the-air TV because it's been around this whole time and nobody cared about it, but it's back.
Right.
So
Yeah, because nobody wants to pay for all the streamers anymore.
yeah, that too. So now over-the-air stations are trying to they're coming up with new things to get new audiences like 360 TV. It's new version of this, and then Outlaw TV is a new version of that for this demographic, and
Right.
eventually, but man, this was a great interview. We really like nerded out the last 30 minutes. Like I enjoyed that though. I really enjoyed that. You asked the wrong question that ended up being the right question.
That's it. You never know.
Yeah, that's all it takes. But man, this was very enjoyable. Tell everybody where they can find you on the internet, your social media and all that.
Yeah, I'm at Thorny Comics, so that's on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm mostly on Instagram, and then Facebook.com/Thorny Comics is all my comic book stuff. And then if you go to the website thornycomics.com, I'm just going to keep redirecting it to whatever campaign or project I'm working on at the time.
Okay, cool. I can't believe I forgot to ask you this question because I wrote it down and we just went on with the interview, and I was like, oh man, I got to pencil back to this. You worked on a show called Comic Book Men with Kevin James. What was that experience like for you?
With Kevin Smith.
Oh my God, I did it again. Kevin Smith. I'm sorry. You
Sorry.
worked on Comic Book Men with Kevin Smith. What was that experience like for you?
It was awesome. It was kind of the thing that how I got into comic books. I've worked with Kevin a few times since then on a few other shows and projects. He's awesome. He's like supportive and nice, and like all the things that he kind of puts out there, it's all real. So, he'll go to a signing and he'll stick around until he shakes everybody's hand and talks to everybody and stuff like that. He's really great. And so, I kind of learned my love of comics from him and his friends talking about these books that they grew up reading when they were young. So that was a great experience. My buddies at Blue Juice Comics, they founded the company they were all, a few of them worked on Comic Book Men also. So they founded their comic book company on the set of that show, so we all kind of, it was kind of like a trajectory changing thing for all of us.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's so dope. I can't wait to have you back on. I'm gonna pick your brain about so many other things. This was a great interview. Like this was really a great interview. I know I tend to say that at the end of everybody's interview, but no, I really felt this one. This was a good one.
So I
But
had a
thank
great
you
time.
so much for coming on. Um, I wish you so much success in your Kickstarter. You're like by now 6 days out. You're gonna make your goal and you're gonna have extra. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be a great lesson for your son. He's gonna enjoy this experience. He's probably gonna be the next greatest. He's gonna be the next Chris Claremont because he Chris
Oh,
Claremont.
I hope so. Yeah.
So like this is awesome that you get to like just do nerdy things with your kids. So I can't wait to do that. For all the parents out there that have nerdy kids that do nerdy things together, I envy all of you because I can't wait for that. But this has been Blerdkast. Uh oh, let me try that again. But this has been Blerdkast. You can find Blerdkast everywhere on the interwebs where you listen to your podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, now known as Spotify for podcasters, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Kindle, everywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find Blerdkast. But this is Mark. This has been fun. You can hit me up on Blerdography on all social media platforms. And this has been a fun one. I'm a little tired now.
Yeah, me too. I gotta go to the bathroom too.
Yeah. So we're just going to end this one. We're going to end this one. But see you guys later and have a good one.